Hello, everyone, once again. Welcome to our webinar on business agility with Safe 5.0 and Metronome. I hope you all had a great start to the week, enjoyed watching the Super Bowl. For folks who are like me, who don't care much for Super Bowl and to think of it mainly as a social event, I hope you had a great start to the week as well. Well, we're not here to talk about Super Bowl, are we? I don't think I would be hosting that show. I would do a terrible job of that. We have a very packed, interesting, and informative 1-hour session ready for you. I hope you're all ready. I'm very excited to be here today because I'm hosting this webinar with Dean Leffingwell himself. Dean doesn't need any introduction, right? Everyone, I'm sure, on the call knows who Dean is. But for those of you who do not know, right, he is a visionary. He's the chief methodologist and the creator of the Scaled Agile framework. So welcome, Dean. We are really excited that you could join us today. You could make some time for us and join us on the webinar today. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. My privilege.
Awesome. So the other voice that you're going to hear on the webinar, besides Dean, is mine. My name is Raj Sankavaram. I am the CEO of Rada Software. We are a scaled agile silver transformation partner as well as a platform partner. And Metronome is our platform that we've built ground up exclusively for the scale agile framework. Folks, I'm really excited to share with you all that I am the product owner of Metronome. And today, during the webinar, I'm going to give you a brief tour of our platform. So, Dean, congratulations, right?
Thanks. Was that you pounding a drum or something?
Yes, actually, I pounded on my table with my fingers. So Save 5.0 went live the first week of January. What a way to start 2020, right? You must be really excited.
We are, and like every release, every Agile release, it's both exciting and not exciting. The exciting part was you never really know until it's out there. The non-exciting part is when you develop and deliver incrementally, you know, the risk should be behind you, but you never know until you go live and get feedback. So we went live in preview back in October, and just January 9th, we turned the system on for the final time, and now everybody and everyone is upgrading to Safe version 5.0.
Absolutely. I got my SPC 5, so I'm all set.
I still think I have to take that exam.
I doubt that. But so is your baby 5 years old now?
No, it's more like, I guess about 8 or 9 years old. And actually, although this is version 5, it's actually, I think, the 8th release. We did a version 1 that was a, MVP -1, 2, 2.5, 2.6, 3, 4, 4.5, 4.6, and 5, so however many that is. And I like to tease the people that when I teach the SPC class, and I'm really looking forward to version 8, because I'm pretty sure that's the one where we'll all take a pill, we'll all be lean agile leaders, the software will automatically write its own unit tests, and everything will just go whoosh through the system. But we're still at 5, we have a ways to wait for 8.
Awesome. Sounds very exciting and something to look forward to. So folks, we have a different format for the webinar today. Instead of dividing the webinar into 2 parts, right, typically what we have done in the past, right, where Dean gives his presentation and then I follow up with an overview or a demo of our platform, what we have done is I've put together a few questions, and hopefully these questions will address the what, why, and how of business agility. So these questions will be, I'm going to ask these questions to Dean, and after Dean answers each of this question, I'm going to give you a short tour of Metronome, just to show you how businesses that leverage Metronome can build a high quality product or deliver a business solution very quickly and easily. Just one housekeeping, please, during the webinar, if you have any questions for either Dean or I, please put in your questions in the question box, and we'll make it a point to answer your questions at the end of the webinar during the Q&A part of the webinar. If we run out of time, obviously we are running on a time box schedule. If we run out of time, we'll make it a point to answer your questions at the end of the webinar. We'll write out all the answers and send it to you. So with that, let's begin the webinar. We'll conduct a short poll just to understand the audience better, right? So what we'll do is we'll present a question to you just to see how is SAFe or Agile being adopted in your organization. So the choices here are, right, is it just your product development, which is your IT, that is adopting Agile, or your entire organization, which is wonderful, right, if they are adopting a SAFe or Agile, or other, you might have other teams that are doing it, and none of the above. That's okay too, right? Because that's why you're here. I'm sure that's why you're here today, and you want to march towards agility. So with that, let's close the polls and share the polls. That's very nice. If 24% of the audience that has the entire organization that's adopting SAFe or Agile practices. That's wonderful.
That's pretty interesting news given the topic.
Right. So let's. Did I go? Okay. Let me ask the first question to you, Dean. So, your vision of business agility. What do you think makes business agility very critical or compelling, and why do you think it's so important now?
Well, it's become important because as the industry has advanced, as virtually every enterprise is threatened by digital disruption, and as we've gotten better, not full mastery, but better at things like agile teams and technical practices and integrating DevOps and, architectural runway and really organizing around value, we're starting to be able to better relieve our backlogs, if you will, of things we needed to do to be able to get a solution delivered. But at the same time, we recognize, and our customers recognize, and they told us this, loudly, that technical agility is not enough. The barriers that we hit, even if we can execute well, tend to have to do with release governance, security, compliance, marketing support, market launches, positioning, marketing, all the things that are necessary to make a solution fit in the marketplace. So as we approached the development of 5.0 a year and a half ago, we used design thinking because we were ready to incorporate that. And we decided to first listen to our customers, and in particular our SBCs in this case, and SBCTs, and ask them what they needed. And their answer was, tech is not enough. We need business agility. We need to get the right people on the train and have everybody working towards a common objective. And Raj, there we go. It is working. Now, as we approach that big change in the marketplace, we also turned to some of our thought leaders, both current and newly emerging. Mick Kirsten has written a recent book called Project to Product. I really like Mick a lot, but I'm a little mad at him because I think he stole the best title that anybody could really describe what's going on in digital transformation. And he uses a lot of social economic research in his book, and he makes a bold claim here, which I've become to believe, which is that those who mastered large-scale software delivery will simply define the economic landscape of the 21st century. That is a big deal. So it says a two-pizza team is an awesome thing, but until we can have 200 or 2,000 people working together, we're going to struggle to survive in that world. And he bases his work on some of the work of Carlota Perez, and she wrote a most interesting social economic book called Technological Revolutions in the Age of Software. And she describes how about every generation, there's some gigantic technology leap. That might be railroads or mass production or the few that you see here from her kind of UK-based work. And that changes everything. The availability of railroads changed commerce. And that was the technology at the time. The availability of steel changed the way we fabricate and the bridges we can build and frankly, the railroads we can build. And she notes that each one of those goes through three periods. They go through this installation period, the turning point, and the deployment period. And I'll talk about those briefly because they're They're quite relevant to what we're doing. In the installation period, this is when new technology and financial capital combine. And you may be at the turn of the century, 100 or 150 automobile manufacturers. That's the Cambrian explosion. The Cambrian was the time in the history of the Earth where millions of new life forms came out. And then there's a turning point where existing businesses either master the new technology or they decline, and some become relics of the last age. Then deployment period. Deployment takes over. That might be mass production. It might be deployment of railroads. It might be, in our case, the deployment of software. And the production capital of the new technological giant starts to take over. So the question with respect to digital transformation is, where are we? And I'd submit that what we're learning is we're very far along that paradigm, and we're starting to see the emergence of the production capital as being the dominant factor. And we see a few quotes here, like the fact that BMW Group CEO expects that in their future, more than half of its R&D staff will be software developers. Now, he said this to Mick about a year and a half ago. I'll bet if we ask him now, the number would be higher. Interesting things. Amazon and Whole Foods merge. Raj just told a story that Siri told her to shut down notifications on her laptop because it noted that there's a webinar in her inbox. Pretty amazing stuff. And now I can order groceries from home and have Whole Foods deliver them. When you look at market cap and you look at the real production capital, you look at a company like Tesla, which has $21 billion in revenue and a $43 billion market cap, versus a company like Ford, which, by the way, is a solid, profitable, and high-quality purveyor of automobiles, an 8-to-1 value ratio. So we don't have a financial appreciation for the prior state. Just recently, Apple became the biggest watchmaker in the world. So here's the concern. If it's easier for Tesla to create an autonomous or near autonomous vehicle than it is for General Motors, why is that? Why is it that Apple can create digital watches better than all the watchmakers in the history of the world? And I think that creates a challenge for us. And I think that others understand. I've been talking to executives on this topic for 15 years. I've never been to an enterprise, I think, where they said, no, we don't think we're going to be affected by digital transformation. They all know that, and they all try to change. But Mick would say we're not so successful at that. I think the danger here is as follows. Facebook, I saw on the news, has a banking license in the UK. What does that mean for banking? What does it mean for traditional banking? And I have a personal concern, and my personal concern is that if the non-FANG companies, the Facebooks and the Alibabas and the Apples of the world, don't start getting competition from those that they're gobbling up, in 10 years, we're all going to be working for 10 trillionaires. And I think they'll be very bad for the economy. I think it'll be very bad for our politics. And I think it'll be very bad, really, for the world at large. And I think we need to do something about that. But it's hard. One of our other thought leaders, a guy that I've read, I think most all of his works, is John Kotter. He, like me now, kind of opines from the sidelines and thinks about things differently. And he put out a recent book called Accelerate. And he's been a fan and a leader in organizational change management for really his entire career. And he makes the point that the cultures that we've built up over the past century simply cannot keep pace. And he suggests that we have a problem. And the problem is I remember, well, our company is larger now. We're still not a big company by any stretch, but I remember when we were a dozen people. And we worked together. We had no roles or titles. This is kind of a joke and kind of isn't. There was a time where we weren't certain who our CEO was. That wasn't important. What was important is we were working together. And companies all start out that way. And that's what Kotter notes. We start very efficient. That's how we get good at it. But as we grow, we need to add some structure. We need HR policies and procedures. We need security. We need operations. We need a building. We need places to operate out of. We need to be able to hire remote workers and facilitate them. We need to create a corporate entity in Japan. And that doesn't happen in the innovation world. That happens in a structure that's designed for other purposes. Well, guess what happens as we grow and grow, right? Customer centricity, where we started, is now fading the hierarchy. But the hierarchy has the power of all the current revenue and the power of most of the direct reports in the system. And when that battle goes, it's not a good thing for the network. And the customers you see kind of bounce down to the lower left, and all of a sudden, goodness, what's left is the hierarchy, and what's not so obvious is the network. And if you look at your day timer right now, and you're spending 70% of your time working on the things that are functional rather than customer and network oriented, then you're there. Well, that hierarchy isn't a stupid thing. We know we have to have direct reports. I report to somebody. I have to approve expense reports, and I have my expense reports approved. I have to work with my stakeholders to establish policies, practices. We work with specialty services like multimedia that created that small video there. So we need our structures. Are they hierarchical or flat? That's a different debate, but structure matters. We have structure here, and we've recently just separated those two concerns in terms of our people operations versus the structure. And Cotter notes that you need a dual operating system. You have to have both. You have to have efficiency and stability on the one side, and you have to have speed of innovation on the other. Well, when I read this work a couple of years ago and started thinking about SAFe, and I said, that's what we've been doing. We've been creating this value stream network, because SAFe is organizing value streams that is focused on the customer. It is not focused on HR policies or what building we're going to operate out of or what we're going to do when we outgrow this building. It's not focused on the funding model of where funding comes in. It's focused on how we use the funding, et cetera. So we think of SAFe as the second part of that operating system. So we're not throwing away direct reports and the structures that are needed. I mean, the local laws in Sweden says everybody has a supervisor. That's not ambiguous. And those supervisors don't all live on the left. Many live on the right. So SAFe is that value stream network for business agility. And in so doing, we had to add to SAFe quite a few new competencies. We added organizational agility. We expanded LPM. We developed the enterprise solution delivery competency, which was the old large solution layer. We doubled down on agile product delivery and integrated customer centricity and design thinking. We doubled down on team and technical agility and completely refactored all the technical skills. We added business teams to the mix because we need them too. That's what business agility entails. And I think on the lower left there, if Taylorism was the management style for mass production, where the boss was smarter than the worker and the boss created the worker's instructions, I think that gets replaced in our world by the continuous learning culture. So if I was looking for a management paradigm, I'd look to the lower left, the continuous learning culture, and talk about that. So this comes together for us to create these 7 core competencies of business agility. And in so doing, we can bring the focus back to what it takes to bring great solutions to the marketplace. I'll tell you a small secret, which won't be a secret anymore. In the last 2 years, I visited many companies who were on the journey. A couple of them didn't really take. They didn't understand the transformation they were looking at. They thought that some small adaptations would work and that their large enterprise, and these are $20 and $50 billion companies, would be just fine by patching some Agile or software DNA into their system. 2 of those organizations, we weren't able to change at all. Both of them now have new CEOs. Both of those CEOs have a simple mantra. We're going to return to the customer focus, and we're going to embrace agility. So when the transformation happens, and it happens in the hands of people who get the new model, have experienced the new model, and are ready to do battle there. But as it does, it's not strictly a technical issue. We can't just say, wow, if everybody in the organization did test-driven development and we had a good DevOps pipeline, we'd be good to go. That's not the case. That doesn't bring in all the stakeholders we need to build the right solution. Business agility requires more. And SAFe 5.0 is a major release for us. So that's why we have the upgrade from 4 to 5 that brings business agility, or the potential for business agility, to our clients. And that means that we need to engage everybody around our application area. Agile gives us much of that. You can see that in the inner circle. But if you're thinking about operations and you're thinking about how to run a manufacturing plant or finance, the Agile Manifesto is not for you, but lean thinking applies. So we think that lean and Agile together give us a way to extend our competencies and our guidance and our DNA from straight software into the rest of the business. And we do that by the 7 core competencies, which I've already mentioned. Leadership has already been there. The customer is at the center. Customer centricity and design thinking is the focus. And then the other competencies, 2 of which we're going to explore in a little more detail. But I'm getting behind my timeline, so I'm going to turn this over to Raj now and let her talk a little bit about what they've done and what they see in 5.0.
Thank you, Dean, for the answer. I agree with you. The 2 examples that you gave on the businesses, right, embracing agility and moving towards customer focus. I think all organizations, businesses need to move towards agility so that they can adapt quickly in this modern digital world, right, adapt quickly to their changing business needs. Now, like Dean said, right, let's focus on this big picture. What you see here, right, is the big picture and how Metronome supports all these tenets on the framework, right? Like Dean said, organizations need to organize around the business value, right? They have to see the flow of business value. So how do they do that, right? They organize as a network, as this dual operating system. Now, how can you visualize this network, right? How can you see how these agile teams are organized around the agile release train? What's the cadence that these teams are running in? How can you visualize all of that, right? What you see here is the landing page in Metronome, right? This is showing you the portfolio safe configuration, right? Let me walk you through this. And for the purpose of this webinar, we have created this SBA portfolio that has 2 agile release trains, your civilian art and the DoD art. Big picture was our inspiration behind this page. And just like the big picture, everything that you see here is accessible with a single click. Right, our portfolio stakeholders can go in and access portfolio information, right, like the dashboard, strategic teams, portfolio Kanban. And similarly, our art level stakeholders, right, like our art leadership can go in and access art level information like your roadmap, your milestones, your art calendar. All that information can be accessible with a single click, right? This view also shows you where exactly are this art in what program increment, right? You can clearly see you're in PI9 and what's the status of this particular PI9. It's about 19% complete. Right, and if you, let's say the teams want to go in and see, maybe they want to see the status of all the features that they have been implementing in this PI. Again, that is accessible with a single click, right? The beauty of the big picture on the framework is that everything that you see there on the framework is accessible with a single click. And we adopted the same design for Metronome. Everything that you see here is accessible with a single click, right? Our product management can go in and access program backlog with a single click. Similarly, at team level stakeholders, they can go in and view the iteration status. They can go in and view the goals, the objectives, the iteration roadmap with a single click. So this is a very powerful visual aid, right, for the entire team, because it brings everyone together and make sure that everybody has access to all this critical business information.
Hey Raj.
Yes.
Raj, I'm seeing both the static and dynamic structure of the separate operating system here. We're seeing how it's organized, what the teams are, and where they are in their working progress.
Absolutely. So that's why this is such a powerful visual, right? And this is the landing page in our platform that conveys all that critical information to everyone within the network, right? Now let's look at all the teams in this art, right? Chances are that all these teams are not going to be located in the same building, right? You might have a few teams that are maybe in Boulder and few teams in Washington, D.C. How do you make sure, right, all these teams have access to all that critical information, right? So what leadership can do is leadership can use Metronome to define the vision and mission, right? They can go in and make sure that all this information is entered in Metronome, make sure that everybody is working together. Dean, one of the things that he mentioned was when there were few people in the organization, everybody was working together. Now, as his SAI grew bigger, right, larger, how can he make sure that everybody is aligned to the common big PI objectives, right? Metronome allows teams to go in and do that, right? Everybody goes in, your product management can go in and define the objectives, and everybody can view these objectives, and they work together towards this common set of objectives. Collaboration is very key, right? Especially if you have distributed teams. How can you make sure that all these teams have access to all the critical information?
Hey, Raj, I like to note that alignment, as nice as it is not a natural state, right? Entropy is a natural state. So achieving alignment means that we work hard on getting alignment, and as soon as we have it, it will start to decay. That's why we have to have cadence and synchronization to regain alignment. And indeed, we plan our sprint lengths and our PIs at a frequency that makes sure that we can't get too far out of alignment before we realign. So alignment is earned. You have to invest in it to make it happen.
Absolutely. Thank you. And let's take a look at this art calendar, right? All the teams in this art can go in and access this and see what are some of the major events that are coming up in the pipeline, right? They can go in and visualize these important milestones. What do we need to do in order to get ready for these milestones, right? For instance, the product teams might want to go in and have a product release so that they're all ready for these milestones, right? How can the sales team support this product launch, right? What do they need to do? Perhaps the marketing team has to go in and run some marketing campaigns in order to support these product launches. So Metronome brings all these teams together and makes sure that everybody has that single version of truth and knows exactly what needs to be done, right, to deliver value to a customer. Again, one of the things that Dean was mentioning was the flow of value, right? Businesses need to organize around this flow of business value. Now, how do these teams go in and visualize this flow value, right? Flow of value. There's a lot of flow metrics in Metronome that helps them do that. They can go in and see, teams can go in and see what are the user stories, the business-facing user stories I delivered at the maybe at a PI that I just completed, or perhaps the PI that's upcoming, right? How many business-facing user stories did I complete? How many enablers, your architecture, infrastructure, compliance enablers, how many of those did I complete, right? How about the defects? How are we doing as far as addressing all these defects that were identified in perhaps in a particular release, right? How about the debts? Could be both your business as well as technical debts. How are we doing, right? All this information are very easily available in Metronome, right? And then once these flow items enter the value stream, right? How long are we taking in order to deliver value to the end customer? Flow metrics makes it so much more easier for the teams to go in and derive all this information and empowers the teams to make all those business critical decisions. So it brings all the teams together and also empowers them with all this critical information. So Dean, going back to that 7 core competencies that you had before, right? One of the things we noticed was the agile product delivery, right? It appears to be a new core competency. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Can you tell us what exactly is new in it, or if there are some elements in it that are common or that were there in the previous 4.6 release?
Yeah, for sure. And in prior releases, we've had backlogs and vision and roles, the product manager. And the assumption is that you could do agile product delivery with that. We've never been truly satisfied with that structure. We haven't really provided any guidance around things like, for example, customer centricity, how market research, market segmentation, finding a customer, interviewing the customer, determining the story map that would solve that customer's problems. We never opined on any of that body of work. So I'm extremely pleased that this is the release in which we're able to establish the center spot for customer centricity. Now, the customer has always been in safe. I did see a kind of a snarky but funny little blog post that says, well, at least I don't have to hunt for them anymore. So that was kind of cute and kind of snarky. But in any case, you don't have to hunt for them now. It's right there. And in so doing, we made a substantial investment in this process. And we're going to take a quick look, a deeper dive at what we mean by APD. So APD recognizes that just relieving a backlog effectively does not get the job done. That will not by itself create innovative products and services, and it won't get the right solutions to the customers at the right time. So this competency is based upon building the right thing for the customers and giving the teams the tools they need to do that. There are 3 dimensions. Each of the companies, by the way, has 3 dimensions. It's just a canonical form. Customer centricity and design thinking. I'm going to talk mostly about that. Develop on cadence and release on demand, which is not new, but has been rearticulated, and DevOps and the continuous delivery pipeline, which has also been enhanced. So as we look at this, my favorite image in all of this, when we approached design thinking, we looked at the various metaphors, and the double diamond, which probably we've overtricked up here a little bit, for me is the one that communicated what design thinking means the best. The diamond on the right is the diamond where techies like me work. We like to design stuff. We assume or we sniff a problem on the left and we create the thing on the right because we're solution builders. But here's the danger, right? Do we truly understand the problem? And design thinking says you don't have the option, you don't have the right to move forward into the solution space until you've done your divergent thinking about what the problem might be. And that's what these axes are. Divergent and convergent, divergent and convergent. My daughter started a company recently, and we went from scratch. She's in the mental health field, and she's been trying to understand the problem of autism disorder and why it's so difficult to get a diagnosis and treatment early on. And we first had to understand the problem. So she went through that work. She did Gemba walks and empathy maps and interviews, and we came to a good conclusion that we think, well, now we can start to design a solution because we know what the problem really is and we know who has it. So it's not just the general case, we know the specific case, which is that the problem looks like this, the customer looks like this, and now we're prepared to design the right solution. We spent some time on the right before we did the work on the left, and we caught ourselves up and said, who says that's the right thing? The net result of that is a product that's viable, sustainable, desirable, and feasible. And that's kind of the basic tenet of design thinking. And we separate the problem space and solution space for a reason. Do we truly understand the problem? By the way, this affects the way you approach product development. I can assure you, we have initiatives right now, one of which we're largely committed to, that we became convinced that we may not really understand the problem space. So design thinking, customer centricity design thinking gives us the ability to get a clear and continuous understanding of the market, et cetera. Now, this is not just in SAFE, it's in our new class, Agile Product Management, Agile Product and Solution Management right now. And that class was developed with the help of Luke Holman and Continuo. I would say he's probably, I think arguably, the foremost leader in Agile Product Management. And this work is now encapsulated in SAFE and in that new class. DevOps and the continuous delivery pipeline is how we get it out. And we would not be successful with the design thinking if this doesn't work because we can't get fast feedback for the ideas that we have. So if the design thinking creates a giant idea and we can't figure out how to create a small idea out of it and get that idea through the pipeline in a small batch and get fast feedback, we can't test the idea. So we don't see the DevOps and continuous delivery as, oh, by the way, that's a bolt-on. That's the heart of how design thinking ideas get tested in staging and production environments. So again, we've always understood that SAFE is a system and it's the harmony. You can't do Agile development without DevOps, and you sure can't do DevOps without an Agile front end. Because if I have a way to deliver a batch to production more cheaply, that doesn't by definition create where the new batch comes from. That's a development side, not a deployment issue. And the third piece of that is the Agile release train. And that hasn't changed. They're mostly described as trains in the market now. I think there's 2 choices, trains or drives. So trains or arts are the shorthand for that. And this recognizes that it takes quite a few teams to build a thing of value. Now, we're a small company here. I'm on an Agile team. I'm really proud of the team that I'm on. And As of 2001, when the manifest was written, I formed Agile teams and I devoted myself to never not being on one. But even in our organization, we can do a lot. We cannot change the needle in the marketplace without help from other teams. When we create IP, it goes through learning insert. When we deploy, it goes through our deployment environment. As we add creature comforts for people that take our courses or want to be on the platform and watch videos, all of this requires a substantial program, and that's the Agile release train. And we work from a single backlog. We're all aligned on that backlog. We debate the backlog. It's not like we wake up knowing what that is, but we work from a common backlog, and that's where we get alignment for the entire art.
So thank you for the answer, Dean. So what you mentioned were that the elements of customer centricity and design thinking that are actually new in 5.0, right? Those are very critical for businesses that are adopting Agile, embracing Agile, right? I agree with you. The way these two elements have been placed at the center of the framework, right, center of the big picture, makes it's obvious that that's the heart of the big picture, right? So one of the tools that Dean mentioned was we could use the empathy map in order to define the customer perspective, right? So what product management can do is they can go into Metronome and use this empathy map canvas to define the customer perspective, define what are the needs of the customer, define what are the pain points on the customer, right? What does he want? Right, once these elements are defined, right, how does the customer see these features? How does he realize the benefits? It's only in the form of features. Now, but the leadership wants to go in and see, right, how is this value being delivered to the customer? They can use this program or product roadmap and see when exactly are my features being delivered to the customer. Right, they not just the leadership, in fact the entire network, right, all the teams in the network can go in and see what's the cadence that my PIs, right, how are we developing, what's the cadence are we developing in, and how about the releases, right, are these releases decoupled from these PI boundaries? So everything is visible right here, right? The teams can go in and clearly see the PI boundaries. They can go in and see the release milestones, right? They can actually go in and view the architecture runway. They can see, are we architecting towards releasability? Is there a continuous flow of features? All that information is easily available for the teams, right? They can go in and see how many infrastructure and architecture enablers am I completing at the end of each PI. All that information is visible, right? Another important thing that this product roadmap does is it connects two different kinds of stakeholders, right? You have your business and then you have your IT. Now, business is all about specifying these objectives, right? About saying the strategy, defining the strategy. Whereas IT is all about delivering, right? When you click on this release box, you see what are the feature sets that are being included in each of these release, right? So this product roadmap brings both the business and IT stakeholders together. Obviously, you see that this network is doing a fantastic job, right? All the features that were part of this release have been completed. So it's an ideal network. I guess we have to be part of the civilian art. But you get the point, right? How all the teams in the art are brought together. Metronome makes sure that everybody has this shared understanding. They know what is exactly being delivered today and what is going to be delivered in the future, right? That shared understanding is critical to scale and sustain. Another thing, Dean, I wanted to call out. You see this red line, we wanted to make sure that so you see that red line is added to the calendar, just clearly shows you where we are today as far as the PI milestones or as well as the release milestones are concerned. So everybody within the network, right, they're all super coordinated and they have all the information available at their fingertips. Now let's go in and see how can these teams go in and stay coordinated during the execution of the PI, right? There's one way to get to this view is You saw that landing page that I showed you earlier, right? You saw that PI9, the current PI that this particular art was in, right? That was a hyperlink. So they would click on that and they would come to this PI9 page. Here, what they see is all the objectives and business value that the teams committed to, right? During PI planning, right? We all went around the table and did committed to the objectives and the business value. So that is visible here. So teams are clear about what they need to do, right? Then they can go in and access the program board. Here they see all the dependencies between the stories and features. And these dependencies were identified during planning. And this is very important to track even during execution. You want to go in and see, right? How are the stories completing? Am I on track? Right? Am I on track to complete this PI? All that information is easily visible. Let's take, for example, this particular story, right? The story that PMO team is working on, which is identify process steps. When they are implementing the story, let's say there was a blocker or impediment that prevented them from implementing the story. What would happen then? Right? So this particular team would go into their storyboard and indicate that there was a blocker. Right? They go in and say, what was the reason this blocker showed up? And how are they going to, and they define this blocker. So give some information that describes about this blocker. Now, what happens next, right? How can they escalate this blocker and make sure that the leadership can go in and take an action on this blocker to resolve? They have to go in and take the necessary steps in order to resolve this blocker. So when this team that is part of the network goes and identifies this blocker on the storyboard, see what happens to the program board. You see this red mark right here that shows that this story has been blocked. So now the leadership has to take the necessary steps in order to resolve this blocker immediately. And we don't stop right there. We actually show you that ripple effect, right? So all those stories and features that are dependent on this particular story, have that block sign too. So that leaders know what happens to the implementation of this PI. If this blocker doesn't get resolved on time, right? What impact does it have on the execution of this PI? So you see, it's very important to say coordinated, and a metronome ensures that there's that communication and collaboration between all these teams, especially more so critical if they are distributed, right? When you're doing across a lot of teams and across your cross functions. So this becomes a very important visual that connects all of them together. Let's move on to the next question, Dean. What we wanted to talk about was the lean portfolio management. So this is another core competency that was there in 4.6, right? So what has been added to lean portfolio management? Can you please tell us about it?
I can. And let me start with a vision. Imagine a future when you were very, very good at the Agile technical practices and your Agile prowess was awesome, and that had been rolled up into the ability to create great products that had good customer fit. You used customer centricity and design thinking to do that, and you can move them smoothly through your DevOps pipeline. The question would still become, what should you invest in? Where do those solutions arise? And that's why lean portfolio management comes to play. And we've opined and designed this area because the traditional approach simply didn't work. The traditional approach was very much about determining programs in advance and features in advance and large business cases and ROI as if that was a real number 2 years early, and it just gummed up the works in terms of trying to get through the system. So LPM is a move away from that. Now in 5.0, we didn't change the basic structure. We changed some of the work behind the structure. So this competency aligns strategy and execution by applying lean and systems thinking, these 3 areas. Sometimes it's interesting to, you roll over maybe a little bit into the Agile method debates and talk to some fundamentalists and they say, well, the Agilists should decide everything. Well, I kind of agree, but I wonder where their paycheck comes from. And I wonder what obligation those who are writing those checks have. So the reality is that strategy investment funding is a big deal. No matter how empowered your teams are, they don't pay themselves. They're paid by the proceeds of successful business operation by funding. So we need a good model for that, but that model has to be agile as well. Agile portfolio operations and lean governance haven't changed a lot in this, but we've done a fair amount of work in the strategy and investment funding area. In specifically, we've enhanced the portfolio vision. It was a portfolio canvas. Now that has evolved to portfolio vision. We've added OKRs to strategic themes, which creates a great kind of tidy way to say, here's the objective and the result. We've enhanced the lean budgets and guardrails, and we worked hard to continue to improve portfolio flow on that level. The heart of everything, of course, is the value stream. And I think you saw earlier in this presentation how we think about SAFE as basically that network value stream. And value streams are a huge breakthrough. They're part of the project to product metaphor. Value streams are long lived, products are long lived, projects are short term and temporal, projects are temporary work for temporary people. So moving to the value stream construct is an extremely important breakthrough in organizational agility and thereby business agility.
Thank you, Dean. So folks, I showed you earlier how Metronome could be used as a collaboration tool, right? How it brings all the teams together and improves communication and collaboration among the teams. Now let's go in and see how the leadership can define the business strategy, right? And then teams can actually connect all the way from strategy to implementation. They can track how these initiatives are being executed, right? So one of the things Dean mentioned was the OKRs, right? The strategic themes have been modified such that the leadership can actually go in and define these OKRs. So we provide this template, right? Strategic teams, we provide this template where teams can go in and, or the leadership can actually go in and define the OKRs, right? And now as large ideas or initiatives pop up, right? Dean talked about flow, the portfolio flow. So Epic owner can manage the Epic, can enter this initiative or this large idea as an Epic and manage this Epic during the entire flow within the portfolio Kanban, right? And when a lot of information has been collected, sufficient information has been collected about the Epic, right? They can go in and edit the Epic, and the Epic owner can actually create this hypothesis statement, right? So what we have done again here is we have provided the Epic owner with this draft template. The fields that you see here are again something that the framework defined. Framework defines these are the default fields, so we have provided this as a default. But the Epic owner can always go and customize this template, add more fields, right? Remove certain fields. They can customize this Epic hypothesis statement, and then when the Epic owner is ready, right, as in collected all the enough information, the Epic owner can create a lean business case, right? Using this customized hypothesis statement, he can generate a lean business case and to make that go no go decision, right? And once the Epic owner has decided, right, they are going to implement this Epic as an MVP, the product management can actually go in and create features. They can go in and define the BAF matrix from Fab. Now we have the BAF matrix in 5.0, where the product management can go in and define what are the benefits that this feature provides, right? Again, we've provided this template for the product management to go in and define all of this. They can also
Yeah, Raj, that's another subtle change here that design thinking causes. Traditionally, product management worked with called the feature and benefit matrix. It's as old as any marketing program ever. And you lay out the features and you describe the benefits. Design thinking inverts that and says, we're going to lead with the benefits and then we'll put the features behind it. It's a subtle shift, but one that causes you to think differently about the problem, because here's my feature, I'm now going to justify it with a benefit. No. Here's the benefit, and I have to have this feature to achieve it. So just a simple twist, and yet all the difference in the world.
Absolutely, it's a different mindset, right? A different way of thinking about the feature that you're going to implement. Absolutely. The product management can also go in and define the acceptance criteria, right? What are the minimum features or what is the minimum functionality that this feature needs to meet in order to be acceptable? All that information can be defined by the product management. Now, once the product management has gone in and defined the feature in a sufficient amount of detail, right? The feature can now be pulled into the program backlog. And what does the product management do after that, right? Now you have a set of features that are all sitting in the program backlog. How can they manage these features? How can they make sure that there's a continuous flow of features, that lean thinking, right, that Dean was talking about? How can they make sure that they manage this continuous changing priorities, right? They can use, product management can use WSGIF, right? They can go in and enter scores for each of the values, and then Metronome calculates the WSGIF, and they can, using the sort by WSGIF feature within the program backlog, product management can sort all the features that are in the backlog by WSGIF and pull the feature with the maximum priority for implementation. So this is a very powerful way. Again, right, you have all these agile teams, and you want to make sure that they have all these changing business needs. How can these teams go in and adapt quickly? So they can use this program backlog feature within Metronome and adapt quickly and easily to the changing needs. Let me show you a couple of more quickly, to show you a couple of more ways that they can track epics, right? Here is one particular way, right? This is a dashboard, portfolio dashboard that portfolio stakeholders can use. Once an epic is pulled into implementation, right? How can they track the burn rate? How can they go in and see the burn up charts, right? How do they track the feature progress, right, of the current PI? How do they manage the program increment during the entire execution of the PI, right? They can go in and see how are the features progress. They can go in and see the flow items, right? How are we doing as far as the flow items are concerned, right? They can go in and see how my WIP, right? How am I managing my work in process, right? They can go in and see how many stories am I implementing? What is my load for this particular iteration or my program increment, right? How many business facing user stories am I implementing? All that information becomes so much more easily available using Metronome. So with that, we have come to an end of the webinar. So let's go in and take some questions. We have a lot of questions. Okay.
Questions. We love questions.
Exactly. Let me pull up that. Okay, the first question is, okay. Does this tool support program board? Also, can you click on an iteration and see the iteration goals and stories? Absolutely. So that question, I'm assuming, was for me. So I'm going to answer that question. Does the tool support program board? Absolutely. It does support the program board. It shows you program. It lets you go in and set all your capacity for each of the iterations. It shows you all the dependencies like you saw later in some of the other screenshots. And then the other question was, can you click on iteration? Yes. You saw that I had the landing page, and the capabilities that exist for the art stakeholders, the same capabilities are available for your team level stakeholders as well. So this question is for you, Dean. Are the PI objectives written ahead of time?
No, PI objectives emerge. Now, that only planning can create committed PI objectives. Having said that, does a smart art go in with some idea of what they're trying to get done? Absolutely. So they go in the top 10 features, and maybe a set of business goals, but those are not the PI objectives written in advance. Those are the intent of leadership and product management to say, we need to make progress in these areas. PI objectives are an output of the process, not an input.
Thank you. Will you share the slides is the next question. Absolutely. What we're going to do is we will share the slides. We will also send you a recording. This entire webinar has been recorded. So we'll share you the recording as well. We'll send you an email with instructions on how you can access the recording.
Don't forget to share them with me.
Absolutely. We'll put it on the YouTube site, right? The SAI YouTube site. Okay, the next question. What tool are you using this? Is the question is what tool is being used for this? I'm not sure what your point was. What tool is being used for this? If you were talking about our particular tool, then this is Metronome. This is a platform that we built ground up exclusively for the Scaled Agile framework. I hope it answers your question, Bali. There goes our. There's few more questions. Since we are running out of time, what I'd say is will collect all your questions and we will make sure we answer all your questions in writing. So everyone, thank you very much for taking time to join us for our webinar. Dean, a huge thank you to you for making time to join us for the webinar as well. I hope everybody had a great time, and thank you once again for joining.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.